Okay, so I'm just gonna put out there that I've recorded an hour, more than an hour talking, and it didn't record properly, which in itself is a bad sign for like start. What my plan was to use this election, which Chris Brennan and Austin Coppock marked off as being the election of the month today, using Pisces and Jupiter on the ascendant to mark my return to making astrology videos. And I recorded a whole hour more and ran into a technological problem where the sound on my iPad didn't record. And so now I'm using another one, and I've got this guy. So even if the sound doesn't work, I've got a backup. Um, and yeah, so the problem is that I don't usually like saying the same thing twice, or I find it impossible to do the same video over again like that because it's not like a mechanical repetition, and I haven't formed like I'm kind of composing organically as I go, right? So it's gonna be its own thing, and I've made a couple tries at doing it again. I didn't like it, so I'm at this point where like in Zen they say the obstacle is the path. So there's certain obstacles like this. This is one of the obstacles. There are all these obstacles to me making this astrological YouTube channel and doing the thing, and this is just one of them. Okay, so and I'm getting back into it. All the obstacles are coming up again. So there we go. Okay, so I wanted to talk about why I haven't been doing astrology for a while, why I've been on hiatus, and why I'm coming back, or what I'm kind of like getting an idea of what my intentions are moving forward, right? Um, so one of the reasons why I stopped making astrology videos is that I was taking courses and whatever. No, actually, I mean, I guess that's not really a reason. If I really wanted to, I could still make astrology videos and take some courses and stuff like this. Um, why have I been on hiatus, not doing the astrology thing for 6 months? I mean, I had this thing where it was like I was kind of in my mind working on this problem, like what to do with this astrology stuff. It's like, yeah, obviously it's a serious business. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had to really labor over this kind of thing. You know, to bear the weight. How the dilemma, the burden, the terrible burden of the question of whether or not to continue with an astrological practice. It's not something our society takes seriously. It's not. It could possibly something you can make some money off of, right? In this day and age, that's one of the things that matters to a lot of people is money. I wonder why, hey? But I've been in a position, anyways, when it comes to money, I have a bit of money. And like for people who don't have money, it's very important to get money because you can't live without any money. That's just how it works in a capitalist society. You need to have some cash, right? And so as somebody who has a bit of money, there's certain things that are afforded to me, such as the ability to buy Eurorack modules, right? And in the situation where what I'm looking at, what I'm doing with my time, my interest in modular synthesizers is something separate, perhaps, from doing astrology. I can kind of see these things as being distinct kind of pursuits, distinct endeavors. And for a long time, I did not have the financial means to afford modular synthesizers, which are seen as kind of a luxury item in some way. They're not really essential at all for making music, and they're kind of impractical, and they're kind of weird. But I like them, right? And so I got the means to spend money on modular synthesizers and do that instead of astrology. And my astrology, not really. I don't know. I've done readings for people. I've made a bit of money. It just did not seem to be having the momentum that I wanted it to have in terms of having incoming revenue stream, and I could say that's my business. That I could actually have, say that I didn't have to depend on a disability check because I was making enough money to be an astrologer and to support myself, right? That was kind of a goal there. I was trying to aim in that direction, but it wasn't really working out. Luckily, there are circumstances that have been in the making for a while about my personal finances that's not really the business to get into on YouTube, right? And that's not really my intention here, is to just get into the financial side of it, making money and stuff, right? But people call, I don't know, whatever. But in some way, I feel like it's relevant to what I'm doing, intend to do here today with this video. One of the things I wanted to address anyways is that you may have noticed that this channel is no longer called Divine Timing. Because the old name of the channel was Divine Timing, and now the channel is called Dan's Astrology, right? And I was talking to a friend on Facebook, and the person made a comment that was kind of like, they were under the impression that I'd kind of given up the spirituality thing. And I don't know if that's because I took Divine Timing name off, or if there was, I basically wanted to, what I made the original video about, I spent some time on, was explaining my decision for changing the name to Dan's Astrology rather than Divine Timing. And basically, so what I was talking about with trying to develop an astrology practice in terms of something that could be seen as a real job that could pay, the purpose for having a Facebook page, right, is to basically market myself and try to draw in people who want chart readings. And so I was having a lot of people tagging Divine Timing, but I realized there's a problem with using a name like that as if it's a kind of like a brand or something. Because my original idea with Divine Timing was I had a friend who called his divination business something like New Dawn Rising, and he'd put it on business cards and hand it out, right? And I thought, well, okay, I mean, that's what you do. I'll kind of have a name like that too, right? And it was just, I don't know, something that I had a spiritual teacher I do meditation with, and she used it once, the Divine Timing phrase. And I tend to fuss too much about making decisions on names, and I was just you know what? Rather than think about it too much, I'm just gonna go with Divine Timing and put on some flyers, or have a business, Divine Timing divination service or something. That's what I wanted to do with it. But the way that the page operates on Facebook is it it's kind of developed a life of its own, because it's like people will tag divine timing kind of like in the way that people would use a hashtag. So like a hashtag, it would be like, maybe if I made a post about like the full moon or something, and I hashtag full moon, everybody following hashtag full moon would see that stuff, right? And so I don't have to explain what a hashtag is, right? Like a hashtag, you don't. If I like whatever it is, like if I like Jungian stuff, if I go hashtag Jung, then anybody can use that hashtag and it shows up and I can see it, right? So, but divine timing isn't a hashtag. I was using that name for my personal page, but people would like use it kind of like as if it's a hashtag, and it's like even just recently, somebody somebody like I changed my names to Dan's Astrology, but somebody like went back and found the original divine timing logo and shared it, right? So it's like there, and with as just sharing a general kind of spiritual idea, being a reminder that divine timing is a thing that is out there, that everything happens according to divine timing, and the intention is basically to remind people of this principle. And so, but there's a problem, because it's like I'm a person. I'm not a principle. I'm not like a transcendent abstract principle. I am just a guy who likes astrology and ideally would like to make a career for myself doing astrology for people. And every time somebody tags divine timing or shares just a divine timing logo, they're not saying, like, it's not like tagging Dan. Oh, my boy Dan here is doing some great astrology videos. Tag Dan's astrology and like you promote. You got everybody watch this. Like, this guy's great, or like that's not what they're doing. They're not doing that. They're not. It's not working for self promotion at all. It's a complete, and it's like really weird to me, because I'm getting like somebody shared just the logo that I made, and I got like over 100 views on just the logo, and it's like. But that doesn't translate. None of those 100 people have asked me for an astrology reading. It's like it's the purpose of what Facebook is for and what Facebook pages are for, and as a Facebook as a service versus how it's being used it's completely doesn't work, right? So that's why I got rid of divine timing. And in terms of actually like but people have been. I don't know if that gives people the wrong impression that I would have gotten rid of divine timing. Like, I mean, one of the things, like, I've been having health problems, right? I also had a 12th house profection year, right? Which is related, I would say, to kind of like maybe a rest and recovery from health issues, or isolation and not like a most active time when you're in your 12th house profection, right? So the 12th, I as an astrologer, you take the good with the bad, right? That there are some years that are of a 12th house nature, and other years that may be of a first house or nature, and so on, and that each have their own character and are different associations, and as such. And so the hardships that come with my life, I view that as just another part of divine timing, right? It's still divine timing, even if it's bad. That was always my perception of what it meant, anyways. So even if bad shit happens, I don't think that's not necessarily divine timing. But maybe I might be wrong. There's like an interesting idea. I'm taking these classes of the good, the beautiful, and the true as transcendent ideals, right? Like J.F. Martel had this thing where he was saying about in the book of Genesis that at first there was the word, and then there's the light, and then God, the creation, and God saw that it was good. That in like the instant of creation, like God didn't create goodness, he created something, and then he saw it was goodness. And that even before, it kind of presupposes that goodness is this thing that exists even before God exists. That that goodness is even more transcendent than you know, and that could, you could get into this whole Neoplatonist thing about the demiurge, that maybe goodness itself is better than God because God is better, you know. It's a kind of a weird rabbit hole to go down, right? But that maybe I don't even know about divine timing. You know, maybe divine. What does divine timing mean? Does divine timing mean good timing? Is divine because I worked out and I got the big cookie that I wanted? Is that what made it divine, or is it divine? Is it divine because there's a lesson there or something, right? Is that like life is giving you the lesson that you need in the right time, right? Or is it just that every time I get what I want and that life's nice, then it's divine? What does divine mean, really? You know, like, and what does divine timing mean when all these people tag it on Facebook? You know what I mean? So that's why I got rid of divine timing. And there's this whole question about, you know, if people don't think I'm spiritual, or do they, or all this kind of stuff. That's something, you know, I was trying to address that in the last video, and maybe I didn't do it the right way, and maybe that's part of the reason why I used an iPad that didn't work. Maybe my subconscious, you know, maybe my subconscious knew the iPad was a broken iPad. My subconscious didn't want me to make that video, and so it sabotaged that thing unconsciously so that I wouldn't be able to do it. And now I have to kind of integrate that. Yeah, if I'm going to put out a video, right, and do something different. But I still have the basic idea that I wanted to do, right? What I wanted to do was take advantage of the fact that I'm in a unique position right now. I'm not in this usual cycle of doing transit videos where I'm like, what's the new moon, what's the full moon, what are the aspects, and just trying to keep up with it and create content following all the transits every week, that I can do something different because I'm outside of that. And what I wanted to do as a different thing was I wanted to do, well, first of all, I'm going to read out of the Upanishads, and maybe I can make a better video and not faff around so much and just get straight on with it here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to include the prayer at the beginning, but I'm only going to read the first question. This is the breath of life, the Prashna Upanishad. May we hear only what is good for all. May we see only what is good for all. May we serve you, Lord of love, all our life. May we be used to spread your peace on earth. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Question 1. Sukasha, Satyakama, and Garga, Kalasha, Bhargava, and Kabagin, whatever. Names that I find difficult to pronounce. A bunch of guys. There's 6 of them. We're all seeking self-realization. Approached with love sage Pippalada for his guidance on the spiritual path. The sage told them, live with me for 1 year, practicing self-restraint and complete trust. Ask me questions at the end of the year, and I will answer them if I can. After a year, Kabandi asked the sage, Master, who created the universe? And the sage replied, the Lord meditated and brought forth prana with Rai, the giver of name and form, male and female, so that they would bring forth innumerable creatures for him. Prana is the sun, Rai is the moon, matter is solid, matter is subtle. Rai therefore is present everywhere. The sun who gives light, the sun who gives light and life to all who live, east and west, north and south, above, below, it is the prana of the universe. The wise who see the Lord of love in the sun, rising in all its golden radiance to give its warmth and light and life to all, The wise see the Lord of love in the year, which has two paths, the northern and the southern. Those who observe outward forms of worship who are content with personal pleasures travel after death by the southern path, the path of the ancestors and of Rei to the lunar world, and are born again. But those who seek the self through meditation, self-discipline, wisdom, and faith in God travel after death to the northern path, the path of prana, to the solar world, supreme refuge and beyond the reach of fear and free from the cycle of birth and death. Some look upon the sun as our Father who makes life possible with heat and rain and divides time into months and seasons. You can see why this is relevant, hey? Others have seen him riding in wisdom on his chariot with 7 colors as horses and 6 wheels to represent the whirling spokes of time. The wise see the Lord of love in the month. Rei is the dark half, prana the bright. The wise worship in the light of wisdom, others in darkness of ignorance. The wise see the Lord of love in the day. Rei is the dark night, prana daylight. Those who use their days for sexual pleasure consume prana, the very stuff of life, but mastered sex becomes a spiritual force. The wise see the Lord of love in all food. From the food comes seed, and from all seed all creatures. They take the lunar path who live for sex, but those who are self-controlled and truthful will go to the bright regions of the sun. The bright world of Brahman can be attained only by those who are pure and true, only by those who are pure and true. So that is the first question of the Prashna Upanishad, and I'm using this basically as a means to, well, you lost the name divine timing, but what you gained is, so I'm talking about the Upanishads for one thing, and so I'm coming back to the practice of astrology, the practice of making content for YouTube, for making these videos. And one of the most fundamental things in astrology is the moon, right? And so I'm thinking, getting the ball rolling again, getting the practice going again, getting the channel going again. First things first, you start with the moon, right? And so it's not just the moon though, but there's some basic stuff going on in here about these kind of elements of yin and yang and what the sun and the moon represent. And obviously they're directing you in the Upanishads towards the sun rather than the moon. And there's the stuff about, like sex, and there's all this stuff about like where we get this religious stuff from, right? Where we've got, nuns and priests and vows of celibacy and how that has always been a factor in religion and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily think that it's something that goes over well today, because for one thing, I think if you look at what's happened with the Catholic Church, like, there's a bit of a thing where, often the people who are the most puritanical are often the most repressed, or that there's a certain shadow side to that. And I mean, my own, I'm a Canadian. In our own cultural politics, we have stuff like that's coming out about what happened in residential schools, and basically sex abuse in the church, and in general, people are not naive anymore about just taking stuff like that on face value, of looking at something like, foregoing the pleasures of the body for the wisdom of the spirit, and being a noble priest who doesn't, molest children or something. Like, the people aren't like, there's a little bit of skepticism towards that whole culture of, or whatever it is. I mean, I'm just using that as like an easy example, but it's difficult to just take it at face value. And there's also different, it's also difficult to I mean, how many people really want to make a really ascetic path in life where you're foregoing all the stuff about, material life and whatever, having fun, having a good time for, the devotion, well, religious devotion instead. It's like kind of, I don't know. And so this is the kind of thing also with divine timing about like, what am I doing here, right? Like, am I presenting myself as a religious devotee by reading out of the Upanishads, or like, there's something about, there's an issue that's raised in doing this that isn't such a big problem if I had this book and I was sitting here in my room, without making a YouTube video, without putting myself out there publicly on the internet. And I've been taking a break from doing this. I haven't been taking a break from this though, right? And there's all sorts of stuff pertaining to my spiritual life, which, what do I, like, what, I have to make choices about what I'm putting online, what I'm not. And there's also the, however I present myself online, what am I holding back, and what's the real honest me versus what is this mask that I'm in the process of constructing here, or am I being authentic with you? Am I revealing to you my deepest, innermost secrets or not? And what's my motivation for doing any of this? Does anybody even care? Does it even care? Like, if I told you, if I just spilt all my guts on here, would you want to know? What's it worth? Am I putting it out there for sale or something, right? I don't know. That's one thing. These are the things that I'm kind of considering as I decide to go back to making YouTube videos. And there's something in this Upanishad, anyways. The wise see the Lord of Love in the year which has two paths, the northern and the southern. Those who observe the outward forms of worship and are content with personal pleasures travel after death to the southern path. So, like, outward forms of worship. If I was to make myself into a social media, spiritual icon in a way, right? Like, create a channel that's all about like having meditation videos and all about having all this public content it's like, that is what you call an outward form. I'm doing this outward thing, but that's the lunar path. By this definition, that's basically keeping you hooked on the cycle of samsara. And obviously there's I've got something else for you. This like, on the same theme. This one just kind of like, I could hear like Hafiz just wanted to join in here, right? So I got Hafiz too. This one is called "Why Aren't We Screaming Drunks?" Like, I wish maybe we should be live streaming this, because then I could like see if anybody else, before I read the poem, I could see if anybody else had any good ideas why we aren't screaming drunks, right? There could be like, you could have multiple choice answer here, or maybe there's different options. Maybe somebody has their own take why we aren't just ludicrously losing our shit in just screaming ecstasy, right? At all times. I don't know. There could be lots of reasons, right? So well, you know, like, can give you some time to just think what it might be. Why aren't we just bubbling over with bliss and love and good vibes and all this kind of, you know, or whatever it is, you know. Like, this is what Hafiz has to say about it. The sun once glimpsed God's true nature and has never been the same. Does that, I don't know. The sun once glimpsed God's true nature and has never been the same. Thus, that radiant sphere constantly pours its energy upon this earth, as does he from behind the veil. With a wonderful God like that, why isn't everyone a screaming drunk? Hafiz's guess is this: any thought that you are better or less than another man, it quickly breaks the wine glass. So that's kind of it, isn't it? Right? Like, that's, if I'm making content, right? If I'm have this thing which is, we call the transcendent truth, this big thing that is cannot be contained into one YouTube video, and yet I'm trying to lasso these spiritual truths and create content for you to consume, you know. It's like, one of the problems inherent in this is that as soon as it's canned and put as an item on the assembly line to be consumed, it's measured not only by other people who are more successful. There's tons of other astrologers out there, tons of other spiritual, you know, people on the internet doing their thing. And as soon as I make something like this, I am canning it into content, and then all of a sudden it's turned into something that is measured by a system that sees it as a unit. This unit, which, even if the content is, you are, you know, the truth, which we're all infinite love and light and the radiant bliss of the universe and Om Shanti Shanti and all, you know, all this kind of stuff, and that gets turned into content, which is all of a sudden, this thing comes into play. I've been reading a guy named Federico Campagna. He calls it technic. You can see it in YouTube, in social media, in the system that turns everything into likes, into plays, into whatever, scores of engagement, and you can, and something that can be put on to take the ineffable and put it on a bar graph of, you know, the ups and downs, and to see, oh, is my video doing as well as the video I made last week? Am I performing as well as this other astrologer who put out horoscopes this week? There's something, the infinite love, as soon as it's put into that system, is like Hafiz says, you've broken the wine glass. You know, there's a machine that works. There's a machine. There's an assembly line. That machine works at the expense of another machine, which is the wine glass that gets you drunk. You know what I'm saying? The drunken machine of Hafiz, the keeps the wine flowing, is broken. And what's the effect of that? You know, what's the effect of cutting yourself off from that, right? Is cutting yourself off that outpouring, the infinite outpouring of radiance, you know, and of what fuels the drive, the enthusiasm to make all this stuff in the first place. It becomes the tie, what makes that whole thing gets severed, and then the astrology videos stop, basically. So, like, it's another way of explaining why I had to take a break. There's another, and I also was, in this course, I was just introduced to an artist and a poet named M.C. Richards, and in her book called Centering, which is a famous book from the 1964, there's a line that she used, or a way of describing, because she's a potter, she works with clay, right? And she was talking about working with clay, right? That there's certain things you can do with clay, that you can kind of like push the clay in a certain direction, but it has its limits, right? I'm not a potter, so I don't know exactly the ins and outs of all the, I would say maybe like if you're firing it too hot or too long, or that if you're not building it to, like if you're building it as a structure and it can't take the weight, she talks about that. And so, but there's limits inherent in the medium itself, right? But she's saying that like the limit of the clay is almost like, it's like you find out that's where its edges are. Like what makes it what it is defined by that limit. And she talks about it as if it's like the will of the clay itself. That it's like the clay finds its will by saying no. Actually, by saying no, I can't do, like I can be a pot like this and I can be a pot like that, but you and the artist are trying to make me into this. Like no, I'm clay. I'm not doing, clay doesn't do that. And that if you're working with any medium, you will run into these limits with anything. Like if I'm a musician playing guitar, even if I like Sonic Youth and experiment, doing all sorts of stuff, there's a limit where the guitar, you're like this guitar, I'm running into the limits of what this guitar is, but creativity, there's this thing that creativity happens in these limits, right? But the human body, the human as a system, is not just is seen by what Federico Campagna calls technic as, how much can we extract from this system and turn it into a commodity which can be sold and stuff like this. But the human in its selfhood is actually kind of you kind of find your individuation by saying no. Like I've run out of my, like this is like who I am is not, like I'm not actually a, there's this thing, there is the divine self of being completely formless, the unborn self that is self, that can be anything, right? But even in the lineage that I have spent the most time in, which is the Ramana Maharshi lineage, there's a popular YouTube teacher named Mooji, and he says, like, if you like coffee and you don't like tea and you have an awakening, you don't suddenly stop liking coffee, and like tea instead, right? If you're somebody who likes country music and you don't like whatever, you don't like heavy metal, you're a country guy, you don't like heavy metal, and you have a spiritual awakening and see the everything is the self, that the whole apparatus of personality that has preferences and does things and stuff like this, it's not wrong that it likes what it likes. It's not wrong that that a person is a personality, is an individual, is not somebody else. Is like there's this attitude in I find in spiritual circles that has to do with the emptiness, right? Like shunyata in Buddhism, that it's all changing. This is true. I agree with this. That the person is a completely changing influx, has a capacity for all kinds of changes and transformations. Sure, right? But there's something, in Deleuze and Guattari, they call it the body without organs. That there's something that is like to be completely smoothed out like a potato, or to be like, there's certain features that I have, right? I'm defined by the fact that, to be nice, to be polite, I'm not going to go around starting fights with people on the internet if I have different views, or if I like, they like Tony Robbins. No, not Tony Robbins. I like Tony Robbins. He's not so bad. Yeah. No. Tom Robbins. I'm into Tom Robbins, but not Tony. Yeah, no. If somebody likes Tony Robbins, I'm not going to go around starting fights with them. And if they want to be friendly, I'll be friendly. But it's not, it's not really my the kind of stuff that I am about, like as who I am, to show up and be myself. And if there's one thing that like astrology, I think what it's about is that there's some level of everything being impermanent, everything changing, and you are incarnated as a limited person. We're here with this one life to live, with this one set of circumstances, with this one thing happening, and it's not wrong to be the person who's coming out of that thing that there's all these conditioning, right? Like the there's the conditioned self and the unconditioned self, and that you have this conditioning that you're like, you know, I was born into this family and my father had guitars and I was around music and now I like to play music, but that's just my conditioning. So it's just a illusion, a fragment that needs to be dissolved, that's holding me back from being, you know, the divine, you know, thinking I'm an artist or something is just an illusion I need to forget about or something. There's all these things of like, or to identify yourself as something, right? To be like, I am what I like to do is like, it's wrong to do that. Like, I'm starting to question some of this stuff. That it's not that, sure, there's shunyata, there's impermanence, there's emptiness, there's changing, but there's the world, things shape and form in the world, and those things have their own, those forms, which are not just loosey-goosey nothing stuff. They're actually there's beingness, being coming into form, as if you say an animal. You know, you can, your pet, your cat is a little being, right? It's a self, but it's also a cat, right? And a cat is not a duck. You know, a cat has a limit. A cat is a cat can't swim like a duck. You don't ask the cat to be a duck, because you accept that each individual has their own thing, and that to express themselves is great. It's the divine expressing itself in all its multiplicity and stuff like this, right? And that's the nature of the nature of incarnation. So the point of all this is that, like, you don't, what's the, like, what Krishnamurti says about comparing yourself to others, that social media becomes this whole system of, you can't participate without, like, all the metrics are there to not, even if you're not comparing yourself with others, you're competing against yourself for what? Like, you're competing with yourself to be better, to put away childish things, or to, like, what is it you're trying to do? What is it that needs to change so you can have the wine glass that's how do you get the broken wine glass back? You know, everyone's heartbroken because they've lost the wine glass, because the wine glass is broken every time they compare this moment to the other one. Every time I compare this moment to the moment that, whatever, I had different people around me, or I was in a different time, I was doing different things, or that I had more followers on Facebook, or anything like that. Everything, the comparison comes, I just get kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and then I'm you know what I'm saying? And it's like, if I'm creating content, if I'm creating spiritual content, you know, maybe it's better not to call it divine timing. If it's going to be something that's consumed and it's going to be measured, and it's going to be there as that kind of artifice and an apparatus to create this machine to give me more money so I can go out and buy more shit, even though I already have too many fucking, you know, or do I? I don't know. Maybe I don't. Maybe that's just a belief, right? Like, maybe, you know, but like this, like. What's the point? Like, I'm supposed to create a machine out of my astrology channel to get the numbers cranking, to get the numbers really going, and then have my bank account really going, and then so I can have rather than having you know, one modular synth, I can have a whole fucking wall, and like have cars. And, you know, and I can hire prostitutes if girls don't like me. You know, like, that's what capitalism is, basically. It's like, if people will like you because you have money. It doesn't matter, you know. It's like, and what I'm saying is, like, maybe by having a division and creating something that's other, and saying that the people who do that are not me, or something like that, or that I don't want, like, maybe it's my own fragmentation or whatever, right? But if I'm showing up as myself, as being individuated, as being, you know, coming to my own individual self, you know, I'm I'm friendly to a point. There's certain my passion comes from a polarity, right? There's the passion of what like I will enthusiastically show up for, and the stuff that I don't like, right? And it's my higher my higher self is the one that keeps everything polite, and so that I can live peacefully and not, go on a like, because I don't think going on a jihad is the answer either, right? So I think the higher self is ultimately trying to take all these, disparate clashes and divisions and resolve the tensions in some way. Yeah. So this is, I don't know. I read the things I wanted to read, and I kind of got the message out there. Although, oh boy, man, I don't know if I got the message out there at all. I was going to talk about the moon. I was going to talk about the moon and the moon, how the moon is about this cycle, right? The cycle of fortune. Times are good, times are down. Or like the ups and downs, like can I build my thing up, or then it all falls and crashes, like it's like I'm watching Game of Thrones for the first time. I started watching Game of Thrones when I took a break from making astrology videos. So and there's something, it's great. Game of Thrones is great for seeing the world of fortune, because you have a family rises in one season, and then a few seasons later it's like all topples down, or somebody's and it's all just if you put your hopes. There's something about Game of Thrones that's just so brutal, but that's kind of what makes it great. But that's why. So what we all kind of know about this stuff is that you don't put your treasures where moth and flame corrupt, as they say in the Bible. You lay your treasure in heaven, right? And that's there's something about, but like by doing this, by making this a YouTube thing, it's like even by doing that, I've already lost. I'm already, as Gurdjieff would say, I'm feeding the moon. Even by like the fact that this is something I'm putting out onto YouTube, and if I'm investing at all in whether this channel grows or succeeds or fails, whether I win, whether I lose, it's like that. I've already lost I've already lost. There's no, and there. So that's what the surrender is about, right? So you can see what are we doing with this moon stuff anyways? If I elect a certain time that I want to use astrology to have some control over what's going on, I'm going to want to control it so I have a good outcome. I want to control. That's absolutely what the Bhagavad Gita says not to do. That's what you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to try to control the outcome. You just show up and be present with what's going on. And being present with what's going on involves holding the tension of the opposites, holding the friction between what you like and what you don't like, and try and kind of synthesizing a more harmonious, peaceful outcome out of it, but not attached to it, not trying to, if success that'll happen organically, that you don't have. It's like the success that every time the sun rises in the morning is a success. That you don't have to be overwhelmed. That's get the partial fragmentary thing of the moon of it that creates competing for fortune, of trying to build up my little empire, of my own little. I am an entrepreneur. I am a little king. I'm a little There's something in there's something in this. Why aren't we scheming drunks? Once the sun glimpsed God's true nature and has never been the same. It's not saying that the sun is God. It's saying that the sun glimpsed God's true nature. That the sun has that capacity for seeing, but that God is something that after that happens, the sun isn't the same. The sun changes. God doesn't change. Sun is more changeable than God is. But it's something that's something that scales down. It says, "Thus that radiant sphere constantly pours its energy upon this earth, as does he from behind the veil." So it's a symbol. The sun isn't literally God, but the sun is a symbol for God, that we can, of how God illuminates things. The sun illuminates things, right? And then if we look at astrology, the astrology chart scales down from God to the sun to the human being, this thing that is a kind of its own, a solar system within ourselves. You know, that we have the planets in us, we have our own light that is like the light of the sun, that like the light of the sun is like God, like our light of the sun is like God, like the solar system out there is like what's happening inside us, and so it all ties in together, right? So and that's the so it's all here in Hafiz, right? Like Hafiz is totally astrological. It's great, but the thing is, as soon as you get into making this stuff into something where you're comparing yourself with somebody else, or you're invested in the world of gain and loss, like, you got to start from scratch. It's game over, man. You know, and that's kind of what I had to do, right? To explain why I took a break. Like, I was at the point where I was that pulled out by the fact that, like, other people got more likes on their social media content, or that I wasn't being able to generate the numbers with my performance. Like, I'm playing it like as a game. Like this is like some game, and I gotta, like, you know, get up the, you know, your arcade game score at the top of the list, and that's what it's like that's not how this game works, unfortunately. And what I'm here to do with this video is to correct that misconception. If I'm going to be doing these videos at all, if I'm going to be doing this is what I want to try to clarify. If I'm going to be doing anything like this at all, if anybody wants to work with me, even, you know, like, if you're going to hire me, you know, not to have any misconceptions about what you're getting into by working with a guy like me, a guy who reads Byung-Chul Han and Mark Fisher when I'm not doing astrology. Okay.